Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is OctoMan from OctoManGames.com, and this is not going to be a tutorial. This is more or less, let's say, a project I want to work on for the next couple of, let's say, days or maybe weeks. Probably also even necessary to be a couple of months over here, depending on, well, the bigger scope in that. And the scope is going to be, I wanted to release a game on my own. So, and I decided to create a project like this one, which has a bigger scope over there and which is worth the work, let's say, on that. So what did I decided to create over here is a defense game, so a defense castle protection, treasure saving, or something like that game over here. I want to check the sound pretty quick. So sounds is good. So what is this game about I want to talk about and what I want to work on for, let's say, the next couple of hours, or maybe at least for 1 hour today, is going to be... Well, this is going to be the actual document where I'm going to start all my planning around. So what is the idea of that game? So basically, I'm going to have something in the middle over here, which is going to be maybe a treasure, a chest, maybe a castle, a building, or something like that, which I want to protect or which the player has to protect over the whole time. And what I want to make sure is that I enable these little or a possibility to set several buildings on several certain maybe predefined spots, like on these ones over here, which are going to maybe be the wall, then the towers on the sides, and so on. So, and every round, let me call it round, I want to make sure that each of them towers can be only built or upgraded whenever we get some resources. So every time one cycle is going to be done, like let's say a day-night cycle, or maybe some clock, several time has been passed, after a certain amount of time, for example, in a, let's say, peaceful manner, I can have the possibility to manage them pieces. So I can build new things for, let's say, any type of currency, maybe coins or something like that. So, and I can upgrade literally everything, or the aim is going to be, I want to upgrade everything over here. So I want to upgrade them towers, I want to create and upgrade buildings and walls and stuff like that, everything like this. And I also can go and upgrade even further. So for example, these outer wall types, or maybe these outer towers can also be built and upgraded. And I'm not quite sure how big the scope can be, but this is what the idea for the moment is going to happen. On the other side, I'm going to have some enemy, whatever, portals, or maybe enemy, or other enemies, in case of other buildings of enemies, which are spawning every time this time cycle has happened or is already over. Then a couple of these enemies are going to be, let's say, generated, and they are going to try to storm the castle or storm the area over here and try to get, the stuff I want to protect, which is going to kind of maybe be in the center, or maybe it's going to be somewhere where they try to, get into and grab whatever that is. So the enemies will come in waves. So like, as I said before, like after a certain amount of time, and try to steal the treasure or destroy a building or something similar. The upgrades in general will be, at first, I want to build something, whatever is upgradable, and then I need to decide what do I want to be upgrading over here. Do I want to go and upgrade the range of, let's say, towers, or do I want to upgrade them shooting speed? Do I want to upgrade the power or even the health of that structure or building or whatever that is? I haven't really thought about the theme yet, but this is going to be what I'm actually taking a look into. So in case of resource management, hi E-Roll, thanks a lot for tuning in. So in case of resource management, I want to go for building towers and walls. I want to upgrade them, walls, towers, and maybe anyhow expand from the center or somewhere around. I'm not 100% sure if I will use units in a RTS style. I don't really want that. I want them to work on their own. So basically, maybe they go outside to the to the, let's say, to a tower which is the most far away from the treasure, or maybe just to protect the tower, or maybe to protect several structures in that case. So whenever these enemies are coming to the or next to the towers, that maybe if I use units, I'm not quite sure about this yet, are trying to maybe protect that like on their own, and maybe I have a possibility anyhow to recruit new units which are going to, let's say, position themselves equally to all the existing tower structures or something similar. Also, I'm thinking about having a main unit which I can control on my player itself. So, or I am, as a player, have the possibility to maybe move to a certain spot, do something like I have to be, for example, close to a structure before I can actually upgrade it, or maybe something has to happen beforehand I'm able to do so. So I cannot instantly build it. I mean, I probably can, but I'm not quite sure about this. So units and main unit are with a big question mark. So I'm not 1% sure if I want to do this. If I do, well, then I'm gonna implement them on the fly. So yeah, this is the core feature, or these are the core features of the game I'm thinking about. And today I want to start to work on that. So I try to take you with me through the thought processes, through all the things I'm actually doing over here. I try to give you an idea how I, structure content, and try to, let's say, help you out, maybe finding some new ideas and stuff like that on the fly. So if you have any questions about the project itself, or anything similar, feel free to do so. So what I'm gonna do start with, of course, I start a new project in Unity right now. Once again, this is not a tutorial. This is more like how I would do stuff. I'm gonna build it up. You're gonna see me writing code. Obviously, I try to explain kind of what I do, but in the most of the time, the most things are going to be, I just want to start with something I want to protect. Size, like what is the game field size? I'm gonna start prototyping just with squares or with cubes and stuff like that. Give them just a simple color to see, okay, what is that about? Is that I don't know, is that a river, or is that a tree, or is that, I don't know, a stone, or maybe just a main building? So this is how prototyping starts. And once I have this kind of base setup, I'm gonna think about how I can extend from that point on. So like, how can I spawn enemies and stuff like that? How do I move them around? And this is probably what I'm gonna start with. So just build or create some main building over here. It doesn't have to do anything but creating some kind of currency every now and then, like every day cycle, or every time I go close to it, I get something, or whatsoever. So this is where I'm gonna go and start with. Also, the important thing over here is I'm not going to do a 2D. I'm gonna go for 3D, so I have maybe something to show around later on. Maybe something is going to be rather interesting. Maybe I go kind of isometric view. I'm not quite sure about this one yet. So this comes or on the fly. I don't even know what kind of user interface I need. The most of the time I want to keep it as simple as possible, so as less inputs as possible. I'm gonna try to make it so that it is also playable on a console using a gamepad and stuff like that. And I want to keep it as simple, once again, as I can. I'm not quite sure, once again, if I just use a mouse to click on something, so I have something to interact in the first place. This is where I'm gonna go and struggle with, probably here and there. Maybe I'm gonna, once again, use some kind of a unit I can move around, like having a boss type, or like a king, or something like this, which I can go and, navigate around and see how I can make them chase the king. I'm not quite sure about damaging and stuff like that yet, so probably I will just use it to navigate to certain spots, to make the possibility, or to give the possibility to upgrade a certain point over here. Also, I don't know about speed and stuff like that, so this is what comes next. So yeah, let's go into that. If you have questions about the project, feel free to do so. I want to, once again, my aim is to probably create a game which I can release on Steam, so everybody can, purchase it, and so on and so forth. So I try to build it around with the theme, or with the goal, let's say, to release a game on Steam or somewhere else. So I can also show you how to do this on Steam. So I can bring you through the complete thought process about that as well. I haven't done this one yet, so I'm gonna go and try to do as much as I can. So sometimes I might not stream about the process. Maybe later on I'm gonna go forward and just give a couple of short video clips or something like about the process itself, like when I do something off screen, which happens obviously most of the time. If you want to keep track on that, you might want to go and follow up on my Discord channel. Down below in the description, there should be a link that you can easily follow up over there as well if you want to. So a couple of other people already joined over there, so feel free to join there as well if you haven't done already yet. Also, don't forget to check out my online courses on Udemy and so on, so you can learn game programming and stuff like that also as well. Once again, all the links are down below in the description. So where do I actually start with is I have a complete clean scene over here, and I want to go and do some rearrangements first. So my game view usually is on the bottom left. So, and I want to also see my console at every time. So once again, I don't care about size and stuff like that. I just want to, let's say, outline a couple of things here and there. If you don't like your hierarchy panel on the left, you can also put it on the right. Basically, for me, it doesn't really matter at all. So what I need is I need a playground, and this is where I just go and, use a plane. And as everybody of you guys know maybe already, this is a 10 by 10 in size. And if I create a new unit, I can, name this one not plane, but ground or whatever I please and like. And I can use this to navigate around. I can later on extend this. I can use a terrain or something similar if needed, but I want to keep it once again as simple as possible, especially when it comes to prototyping. So the next thing is I need another 3D object, probably a cube. And as you can tell, this cube is quite huge in case of this, or in terms of this plane. So it looks like that the plane size has been changed. Usually a cube is 1 by 1, but let's see. Well, yeah, this is a 10 by 10 plane. So 10 by 10 plane is probably way too small. And so I'm gonna scale this up to maybe a 10 by 10 plane. So I have like 100 meters by 100 meters or units over here. So I have enough room to place houses and buildings and plan things around. Also, what I want to go for is, let's say, 5 to 10 materials I can place randomly on content and scale that stuff around and see what's going on and how can I structure all of that. So I want to outline a basic setup for a, let's say, for a level or something, so I can see what's going on, what does happen, or what works, what does not. Do I want to have like slopes in the terrain and stuff like that? So, but yeah, I want to go for it and first off create just a materials folder. And in this materials folder, I can, put in a couple of materials, and which I can use for the ground, for red for enemies and stuff like that. Right click, create new material, which is somewhere here. Gonna name it maybe red. I can duplicate content by hitting Control D pretty quick. Hit F2 on the keyboard if you're using a PC, and then you can just simply rename these other ones to be green. Maybe gonna make another copy and make it brown. Maybe I need something bluish, whatever. So something happened here, so I'm gonna go in there and rename this one to blue. So now I can tint them. They have just a standard material over here, so we can go for any kind of a bluish type, maybe. Yeah, depending on how you like. And please, gonna go for some rather saturated colors at least. We got a green over there, so let's see which one might fit. I need a gray one as well. So maybe duplicate this once again. Control D, name it gray. And this red one, well, yeah, I just need a reddish color tone. So I can put brown on the ground, and as I can see, it's kind of reflective. So I want to take all of these and just get rid of the reflections. I can go over here for getting rid of all reflections as well as the specular highlights. So I have a clean mesh, so nothing is going to intersect my vision, let's say. I don't really care about the game view at the moment, where the camera is and stuff. That does not, it doesn't care. I don't really care. So let's assume this is a main building or something I want to protect. So I'm gonna give it maybe a 10 by whatever 5 and a height of maybe 5 as well. So I can put this building to any position of the actual location over there. So let's assume this is going to be my main building to be protected. I can put this directly somewhere in a scene, or can, just to have something to play around with. So this is my object I want to protect. I can make a green or blue or any type of a color over there. The next one is I want to have some more buildings or maybe some more structures to see what could be over there. I'm going to name this one maybe building or main building or something like that. Later on, I'm going to work with layers and tags and stuff like that. But for the moment, I don't really care about this. I create a new one and I name this maybe trees. And in this manner, or in this trees object, first off, I'm going to go reset this one to 0. So nothing is in the way. As a child, I create another cube. Gonna name this one tree. And I'm gonna make it green. Like, just put the color on top of that. I can reposition and scale and all of that. So if you want an easier scale, you can use the rect tool for scaling as well. So you can make things big and huge and stuff like that, just based on the outlines of a simple object, kind of. So you don't have to mess around literally with the pivot point. If it doesn't let you go further, you can use a normal scale, of course. So, well, that's going to be maybe too big or too huge over there. But yeah. So, and if I'm gonna have some tree objects later on, I can duplicate this and, create multiple of these and just outline a couple of things. I don't really care about the rest. It's just like, I just want to see what could be the structure of the game, or what could be a principle, just a simple layout and stuff like that. So also, I want to later on do not allow access from the backside of the castle or the backside of the treasure I want to protect. So I need to tell the navigation mesh, which I probably are going to use later on. Gonna go change that to center. So I'm rotating around the center, not the pivot. So this is going to be probably area I wanna nobody go onto. So again, this is the castle, my main building. These are the trees. Later on, I'm gonna play around with colors and stuff like that. Currently, it doesn't really matter. I can also place stones and stuff like that. So bigger rocks, which are also getting into the way of the enemies, for example. So the next one is I need something like enemy gates, or like something bad, right? So something who's going to produce or spawn objects. So I can, if I want to just, duplicate the main building, put it over here, the size and stuff does not matter. I'm going to make it red in this case. So I know what that is going to be probably about. And every time a wave is going to come, I'm going to go and spawn objects on that or next to it. So this building over here is going to be an enemy building. So I can go and rename this one. And I will have maybe 2 or 3 or 10, I don't know yet. It's an enemy building, and probably this building needs to be, maybe I need to destroy it later on. Maybe I can anyhow destroy it. Maybe there's a main structure later on, which I can also, well, not destroy as a player. And again, the actual rotation and stuff like that at the moment does not matter at all. So once again, I'm not quite sure about the sizes yet, since that is a rather small way or a small outline over here on things I can do. Next one is I need another cube, which I want to place. Well, let me first off reset it. I want to make this some kind of a platform. I'm gonna make this a bit smaller like that. And this platform is probably something I can later on talk to. I'm gonna make a copy of that. And what is that platform about? Well, these are maybe possible positions, or let's say objects where I can place a tower on. So something like something like an archer tower or something like that. So if I select that or anyhow be close to this object, I want to make sure that I can build on top a tower which is able to protect stuff. And same for walls. So if later on I have another object, gonna duplicate this, and I have to pre-design these levels later on. So depending on if I have multiple of these, I may have some objects which are going to be like a wall type. And once these walls are, let's say, big enough, I'm gonna make it a bit bigger, nobody can pass this area. Well, this is actually only true if the wall has been built. Otherwise, I don't care. And the enemies shouldn't care either. So that lets this piece open here, at least for the moment. And what I want to do in the next step is I want to define a navigation mesh. So basically, to bake an animation mesh or a navigation mesh, I want to make sure that OctoMan, oh my god, hard name, sorry about this. Yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in. I'm glad you are here. What I want to do is, when these pieces are, let's say, not built, I don't want to see them in the navigation mesh. So they're basically going to be some kind of a navigation obstacle, I guess, which I can enable, disable, and implement into the navigation mesh, or even not. And how do we do this? Well, first off, we need to make sure that these are, or some of these elements are going to be navigation static. So basically, for example, that's what we can try to work on first. We can select multiple objects over here. They usually get highlighted. Well, I can see this over here. We can go here to navigation static. So basically the plane is navigation static, as well as these obstacles. And probably I'm gonna make the building over here also navigation static. Not quite sure. Same for trees. Usually they are navigation static as well. Shouldn't matter if they are chopped or not. If I can even chop them down, I'm not quite sure yet. I'm gonna get rid of the selections, or several of these selections. I'm gonna make them trees, maybe also navigation static, like that. Now, I want to bake a navigation mesh, and there are a couple of things I have to take a look into. So first off, if you bake an navigation mesh, there are some things we can take in consideration, and maybe there's a GitHub something where I can make use of, let's say, certain things from this navigation mesh. Like there's an extra workflow for that, which has several different handling possibilities over there. So how do we do this? Well, we need to bake an animation mesh, a navigation mesh. And what we're going to have here is a nav mesh obstacle and a nav mesh agent. So an obstacle, once again, is something which we can, like this one, we can use that to be dynamic, literally. So when it is not there, it changes the navigation mesh itself. Now I just don't remember how to bake a navigation mesh. So I'm not quite sure. So let's see how that was. It's quite some time ago where I did this. I'm not quite sure if that is even over here in the dropdown. So as you can tell, even if you know programming, you don't have to know everything else. Probably it's somewhere here in one of these things. UI, no. There we go. So we got offlink, nav mesh agent, kind of disabled the navigation part over there. So I'm not 1% sure if I need to select this. And I believe it's not going to be inside the component piece about navigation itself, because these off-mesh links are basically just links between objects to, for example, jump over platforms or stuff like that, or maybe reach a certain other point, but has nothing to do with the actual navigation mesh baking. So let me try to find pretty quick. No, that's not what I want. I'm gonna go pretty quick. And this is what you should do as well. If you don't find it, or whatever you're looking for, you should just take a look into, well, the internet, and just, take a look where the navigation mesh baking is going to work, or how does that work. And we can do this on runtime, that's what I know. And we can also, I believe, do this we can also do this like, a static bake. It seems to be that there's a window about that. So let's pretty quickly see where this could be. Analysis, AI. Well, AI navigation, is that this one? That looks good. So how do we do this? We need to make sure that several things are walkable and unwalkable. So if I select the plane over here and go to bake or agents, areas, we got this walkable, not walkable, and jump or jumpable. So I first off need to say that this one is a navigation static, which it does, and I need to tell this navigation area is walkable. For the other ones selected, like if I take these ones over here, we can start to work on and say they are not walkable. So they are not really being considered as being a walkable area. And same for the trees. I don't want them to be walkable. So I can literally select them all. Let's try again. And I make them also not walkable. And when I select this one, I should be able to bake that. I don't mess around with the settings here. But once I do a bake, I should see something like that. This is the actual navigation mesh over there. So it should be rather flat above the surface, probably not 100%. I'm not quite sure if they updated this one, but usually it is like when we go into isometric front view, we're going to see a slight offset here, which is like a slide above the actual plane, if the plane is on the 0 axis over there. So the plane is below the actual navigation mesh. We just see a slight bit over there. We need to make sure later on to consider that. Otherwise, it looks like our enemies or our whoever is going to come over and move along this navigation mesh is probably flying over and or looks like that it is flying. And when that is happening, the problem is that, well, it looks horrible when we are casting shadows on the ground and they are flying over there. So what we can also see, this one over there is considered as being a walkable piece over there. So it has a flat surface on the top. And we don't want to do this. I go back out of isometric view. And I want to make sure that this one here is not a walkable object. So I just make it not walkable. And I have to rebake this. So I just, bake it again. Boom. And now this flat surface is not walkable anymore. So what we can now see is we have some kind of corners around these obstacles. So depending on what they are, we can still consider them to be walkable or not walkable. And once again, there are some other things I need to take a look into later on, like when it comes to obstacles, like when I move them away from this position, that they are keeping updating the actual navigation mesh. So it's more like a dynamic updatable mesh in that case. So not a fixed bake mesh. It's more like a dynamic one. So basically these objects probably are not baked in the main mesh, but they change it once the obstacle is reaching or let's say passing through the actual navigation mesh height over there. Okay, so the basics are so far done. So what I want to have now is something which is going to move along, or I can create or position somewhere, which is going to be some kind of an enemy over there, which is trying to reach this building anyhow. So should go have this building as being a target, getting generated every now and then, maybe like 5 in a certain manner, and then just moving along over there. And try to reach that target. So just go to this position. And I have a couple of things already like that. And I created something similar. So basically to move from A to B using a navigation mesh, I just need to fill out where it was. And maybe I can reuse scripts. So if you have created some script in the past already, feel free to use them. I mean, why not? Why should you always go and recreate content? And this is basically what I try to do here as well once I am able to. So I'm gonna try to find the script or the piece of that script which is having that content already, which is just having a navigation mesh. And I'm gonna just do a simple thing. I put a target somewhere and set the target to be, well, the content of the building itself, for example, or tell the let's say tell the buildings to produce them, and once produced, they're gonna give them let's say the goal where to move to. So let me pretty quickly take a look over here. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna start with. So I need to have an asset full new folder first, and I'm gonna name this one scripts, where I'm gonna put all my scripts into. And what I want to do in here is I want to put some other scripts or some other folder for just for enemies, which is also going to be like maybe a timeline and stuff like that, which all which is relative probably to the actual enemy settings over there. So, and in here, I'm just gonna go and name this one enemy move or whatever. They don't really have anything else, at least for the moment. I just want to navigate them over the mesh and trying to reach the, let's say, in quotes, actual target. So, and I need a spawner for my enemies, so I'm gonna put them spawners onto either one or the other building over there. But we can also try to let them chase a certain object for a certain amount of time by using the navigation mesh in general. So for example, when we have, or when I implement some kind of a player that I can say, okay, the player is going to be the one I want these enemies to chase at the first place. So when the player moves along the same surface, basically also on this navigation mesh, I want to make sure that they're following up there as well. So if I'm using a player character, which I can, move along using, a gamepad or, a PC input in any case, maybe a clickable, like a targetable, stuff like that. I don't know. And maybe also some attack stuff. So let's go over there. I need an enemy spawner. So I just name it enemy spawner. It doesn't do much, but spawning, well, enemies. And I can later on define how much I want, and per wave I can add some more, maybe have some different enemies in the end, and so on and so forth. So to actually have an enemy first, I'm gonna create a capsule. Or let's say for the first time I just go and with an empty game object, I guess. Just in case, because I probably need to have all the agents and stuff like that on the bottom, like the center point, or maybe I don't need it. I'm not quite sure. But let's see. Let me name this one enemy, or enemy base. Basically, it doesn't matter. Enemy base. It's just an empty game object. I'm gonna go to inspector, and I want to make sure that I reset this position first. On this enemy base, I create a new 3D object. And this time I'm gonna use a capsule. It looks a bit more organic in playtesting. I'm gonna lift it up until it is like kind of close over the ground. We can see this out of the camera. But if we double click, we can go closer and see where it actually is. Pretty good. So my enemy base is going to be at the, or should be at the bottom of the object. So we go from center here to pivot point, so we can always see the pivot is going to stay at the bottom of the object, so we can later on navigate using that pivot point. So on this one, this capsule is basically just the graphics. So if I later on want to go and change the graphics, I don't intersect, or I don't destroy the main content. So I can make the capsule huge and small, slow and fast based on whatever settings. So I don't really have to care about this. Next one is I want to add a navigation mesh agent to my enemy base, and what we can see, it creates automatically this kind of cylinder. And this cylinder is basically what it makes move. So for example, the broader that circle is, the far further away. Let me try to select the plane and show you. So the further away it goes around these corner pieces over here, so it doesn't I mean, that's what I assume. It uses that, so it tries to go through narrow places and stuff like that. It cannot jump over these, so it will navigate around that using that circle. The bigger the circle, the more the more actually I believe the more size it needs to go in between objects and stuff like that. So what else do I need? Well, I need a script on this one, on this navigation base mesh agent. I believe this offset over here has to be, if I remember correctly, a negative 0.8 or something. Let's see if I can put this 0.08. So it is a bit below the actual navigation mesh over there. I don't really know about speed, but my ankle here might be a bit faster, maybe it's 350 angular speed. So it's more like going more, let's say, directly to its position where it should be. Now I want to go and take my enemy move script on this because I want this to have a target and I want this to know how to navigate in general. So I give it a vector 3 goal or something where it should go to, and then it tries to find its way using the navigation mesh agent over there by just using set destination or something similar and the speed settings, whichever they are. So if I have later on bigger ones, I maybe change them accordingly, so give them more like smaller speed and stuff like that. But maybe I have to play around with these sooner or later. Stopping distance, well, I'm not playing around with these yet, but later on I have to. So the next one is I need another folder over here, the prefab folder. Prefabs. And I want to make sure that I put all the enemy prefabs well in an enemy folder. Enemies. And in here I'm gonna drag my enemy base because I need this prefab to, let's say, spawn something, and I can only spawn prefabs. A prefab is more or less something called, or is this similar to like a template. So a template which stores the base information, we can still change them after instantiating them, like creating them in the playfield, but we need something as a baseline to be generated, to be created, and we can also give them like extra stats and stuff like that later on if necessary. For example, a health script which has maybe some different damaging purposes, or let's say it takes more damage than others and so on. So, yeah, let's try to get into the script itself. So I double click this name. You can do this, nothing fancy over there. I trust the author because that's me. And well, now I'm going to go back into my already existing folder and I'm going to see and find what I need to find over there. So first off, I need the actual navigation mesh agent, which is sitting directly on the object itself. So I can grab it, or I can also take it and put this into the slot. So both works. If I want to, I can use a serialized field, or I can just keep it. Let's say I can keep it, what is it named? Private, actually. What I need for navigation is the actual namespace Unity engine.ai. For artificial intelligence, well, it is kind of something like that. I could also use an A star, but since I don't know how big the actual game field could be, probably A star, well, is not really nice. So I'm gonna try navigation mesh agents over here. So I need this, just a name, just name it agent, like this. And that's basically it. I need a target, which is going to be of type vector 3, since I'm in a 3D space or 3D manner. And navigation mesh also works in a 3D space. And what I need is a public accessor for this vector 3. Which I just named target. This is basically a getter and a setter. So I just want to, basically this target has to be a big T and this one is a small t. And I'm gonna set it up so that I just want to have a setter for that, not a getter. A getter would return this, but what we need is just a setter. So I want to set the target to whatever whenever I instantiate this object. So basically this enemy move script gets called. I want to make sure that whenever I create a new instance of that, I have to fill in the data for the next or for the new destination to go to. So what does it mean is depending on maybe the enemy type, I can go for certain things, for different targets, let's say. So I can target this one by just using that. So what do I want to set as the actual target is going to be equal to the value we are passing in. It's equal to value. And what I also want to say is I want to update the agent directly. So I want to tell the agent to go to a certain, or this actual certain destination. So we can say set destination, open close parentheses, and the destination is going to be the target. So basically this vector. And that's most of the time it should be it. And probably if I'm having a certain different goal to be reached, I probably have to do this. I actually can get rid of start and update at least for the moment. Let me implement awake, which might be a problem, since when I create a new instance, I might this awake might be a bit too slow. Not quite sure which is called earlier, but I can try to set the agent. So agent is equal to get component of type, well, nav mesh agent actually. Open close parentheses, close the line with a semicolon, so we just get the agent filled automatically. If that does not work 100%, or we get an error line because we are trying to set the agent's target beforehand by using this vector, well, we might want to go and do it a bit different, but we'll see. So I, just in case, go and create a new void set goal. So if I have to change the goal at any time, I just can say whichever goal I want to set. And basically I reset or set the target to be equal to whatever the goal is. So the goal is going to be the vector 3. So basically I'm calling this vector targeting and set it to whichever value I think I need to. So, and once I have that, I should be able to move to a certain target whenever it is defined by whatever, like for example by the building itself, or by a setting in the script itself, and so on and so forth. We can take a look into this in just a second as well. I now need a building or a spawn possibility to spawn that object and set the destination of whatever I spawn, you know, on the certain thing. What I also want to do is I want to change the material of my enemy. I just drag the new material on it, so you can see it's instantly updating it over there. And what I also want to do is I want to update all the templates, all the prefabs. So I go to overrides and say apply all. Pretty good. So now we should, if we have a target, should be able to move that thing to the certain target, to whatever it is, once we have set it. And if it has no target, well, I believe we're gonna get some information about it over here, like no destination has been set or something similar. So yeah, we need to go to the enemy spawner right now and see how we can spawn them enemies. And maybe we can say we need a certain amount. And I'm gonna try to see if I have something like that, like to spawn a camel, or not a camel, to spawn an enemy in any case, and how to set the goal to. So where should the actual object should go to? And maybe we can do this like how often. So we can say something like we create a serialized field over there with an integer amount to spawn. Maybe later on I'm gonna go and use multiple things like scriptable objects for stuff like for things which may or may not change, but for upgrades, for example, I will definitely do. I maybe need a spawn point to know where to spawn them. So I'm gonna create another serialized field over here and name this one transform, or the type is going to be transform type, and spawn point. And what else do we need? Not quite sure. Or we need the target, I guess. Yeah, maybe we're gonna give it a target. So not quite sure. Maybe I'm gonna have to change this to the enemies later on. So another serialized field. Maybe I also take it to transform over there and name it maybe target. At least for the moment. So I have something to play around. So I can use maybe void start just for testing. Like after a certain amount of time, like after 10 seconds or 5 minutes or whatever, I can start a process to create 10 units and bring them next to somewhere. Anyhow, so I could also say I want to click on something on that, but it doesn't matter because it is an enemy type and an enemy type is automatically generated over there. To do so, I'm gonna go and create a new void spawn. I can probably also use a coroutine for that if needed. Like if I need a time-based action in general, I could also use an invoke method to invoke content after a certain amount of time. Let me use a coroutine, an IE enumerator. So what do I want to do after a certain amount of time? Well, we can, in each enemy spawner, we can probably create a timer. Maybe I'm gonna use this in the game manager later on, but for the moment I don't have that. So maybe we're gonna set a float timer. And I maybe can set this one to be 10F. So the F stands for the float. And we can say we want to make something like unlimited loopable while true. So while we are inside that, while we are alive, or while this game is running, we can say every 10 seconds that we want to do something. So we first off yield return new wait for seconds. And the seconds we want to wait is the timer. And once that, well, actually, once that is over, the timer is over. Let me make a semicolon. Once the timer is over, we want to spawn objects, and we want to say how often do we want to spawn. So we can say spawn amount is equal to 10, or whichever base thing we go. We can start a for loop. So I'm going to use a for loop block over here. So while the amount is smaller than the amount to spawn, I'm going to copy that value. So while we are in that, undo, we want to spawn or instantiate a new object. And before we can do so, we just store this new game object. This is a new enemy. And we say instantiate. So first off, we need to know what do we need to instantiate. And since we don't have anything for our prefab, I'm going to create a new serialized field over here, which is going to be of type game object. And we just name this one enemy prefab. Later on, if I have multiple different enemy types, I can use multiple enemy types at the same time. So maybe per each wave, I want to have more or less of the same enemy type, or like 2 of them, 5 of them, and so on. So currently, I just want to see if I can set, first off, generate, create, and then set the goal to wherever I want the goal to be. And see if they are moving to this certain spot. So I want to instantiate that. I want to tell where do I want to do this. I want to do this at the spawn point. And the rotation, well, we can use maybe, what do we use? Maybe spawn point.rotation or something. Spawn point.rotation. And this spawn point here, it needs spawn pointer position since it's needing a vector array. Since I now have that, I can talk to new enemy dot, and now I should get the component of type enemy move, and with parentheses dot set goal. I want to set the goal by hand just in case, which is just giving me the possibility to call the vector, and the vector is going to do the rest for me, or for the actual unit over there. Where do I want to go and send this is, I want to send this to the target dot position, like that. Okay, so now we should see 10 times created, or we should get created our enemy prefab 10 times if I don't change anything on the spawn point they should get the target, and then they should move to the point. Let's see if that works. Hi, Hakan. Why do you say you don't want to use me wait for seconds? I can use just a while and reduce timer by time to delta time, or increase timer times time to delta time inside that. Both works. Not quite sure of that. Please stay in English. So, I need the enemy spawner on either of them objects, like for example on this one, but I don't have the actual transform for the spawn point. So I'm gonna create one. So I create just an empty game object, name this one spawn point. And I'm gonna bring this on the y-axis down. So basically I need to have this somewhere on the floor, like here. If I want to, I can go and use, I don't know, some icon. Why do you advise that? What's wrong on getting the corresponding component I want to talk to? I could drag it in, but why should I? If I can automate that? I mean, I have to only drag it once, but yeah, what is the purpose? I'm gonna get rid of these two, since I can now take this one single building and duplicate it once I have set it up correctly or fully. So in my enemy scripts, I'm gonna take my enemy spawner script and put this over here. Now I have, or I can use spawn point, drag it in here. I can put the target to be this building, but this building is currently having a flying, or let's say an object like here. So it tries to target the center point over there and not the floor. So I might gonna go and reset or recreate this building a bit. So I'm gonna create an empty parent, which is going to be my building base, which I can target easier. So how do I do this? Well, first off, let me get out of isometric view. There are a couple of possibilities to do this. I can say, okay, I'm gonna reset this one, and I'm gonna remember this number, y2,2, and I don't care about that. And I can take the building now and lift it up again. So basically the building base is going to be on the 0 level, and the building itself just above the 0 level by its actual size. And it's a bit higher because it was below or inside the ground first. So same thing can happen to this one. So if the enemy build, I mean, I don't care about this enemy building, but the problem, as you can tell, is probably this spawn point is not directly on the floor. So you can do eyeball that, slide a bit at least, and we can see if that works. So this we need this enemy prefab in here. And now we can take the target of the building base and drag this in here. So currently I have a timer of 10 seconds by using wait for seconds. If advised or not, if Hakan is going to tell us why, well then feel free to do so, or why we shouldn't use that, and use a timer or whatever, or floating number to fall down. So after 10 seconds, this one here should probably not work at all, or shouldn't move at all. But after 10 seconds, I should see something happening over here at the spawn point. Let's see if that works. Oh, we didn't. Why not? Because we haven't starting the coroutine, which we probably want to do in here. So we just call start coroutine like this, spawn like that. So every 10 seconds, we should now see something. if I use it this way, well, yeah, I create a new wait for seconds. That's right. Does it eat much? Does it eat much of the actual CPU? I know I can store everything. I can also, once again, I can't even get rid of that stuff. The question is like, is it really worth it, right? So what we can see now is we created some of these guys here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have now 10 enemies getting spawned. They got a target. We don't have any issues in the console, which is good. Now we can watch them and see how they move to the actual target. And once they actually they try to reach it, I believe they are not really able to reach the target. As you can see, they are just close to it, but they cannot reach it. Why not? Well, if we take a look into the navigation mesh, you can see it is just not reachable at all because it has been, yeah, well, it's blocked out due through the bake itself. So I'm not quite sure if that is, let's say, necessary, but we can also say something like we want to avoid that. We can also say the stopping distance should be higher, depending on where the aim point for them is going to be. So as you can see, they are slim enough to bypass dead walls. And they are rather slow, but that's okay, at least for the moment. So we have a bunch of enemies getting spawned now, every now and then. And, well, we are using currently, every time we are creating a new wait for second over here, which we don't have to. We can also do it another way. So we can create that and start that new wait for second term over there and recall it, as Hakan already said. We can also use something totally different over here. We can just use a single float. Just to show you another way, again, float t equals whatever, 0. And we can increment t over time. So we don't need to wait for that. We can say while whatever time or whatever, yeah, I don't know. So something like maybe a nested while. No, we're going to put an end operator, while true, and timer. No, it's bad. Yeah, we create just a nested while. If you don't like it, don't use it. So while timer smaller, what is it? Amount, typo, while amount to spawn. No, the actual timer. What is it? This timer. While t is smaller than timer. God damn it! Can't type today. While t is smaller than timer. We want to say t plus equal time.delta time. But not that t, we need the small t from the float. And we can here say yield return null. So basically we wait until our t has been reached. So basically that should be an internal timer right now without using a new instance of a wait time. No idea if that is really saving us anything. No idea if one or the other is better, faster, quicker, more often called. Who cares? I mean, I don't care. But probably that is going to be it. So it waits until it has been reached. Then whenever this is going on over there, we're going to go and leave this while loop. Then we do this for loop. And after that is happening, we need to set t to be equal to 0. So the small t. So t equals 0, so we can go back into this actual while loop. And, you know, we restart this while loop, and then we restart this while loop, get into it, because t is then, once again, smaller than the actual time over there. Let's see if that works. I don't know. if that doesn't work, then my Unity will crash. So since while loops can be picky, just don't forget to save before you test anything new, and get into it. So after 10 seconds, we hopefully see some spawning. We hopefully don't see any freezing over there. So 10 seconds have been passed. 0 has been reached, or actually the 10 seconds have been reached. Now we wait for the second wave after the next 10 seconds. So this is, as you can see, another way around. So you don't need to create a new instance of a wait for second, and you don't have to, do stuff like that. You can just do it this way around as well. If you like it more, well, then use this one. It doesn't matter actually, right? So, and same for get component. If you don't want to use get component, then you have to drag all the content inside a serialized field, or basically a private, or in this case, a public property. It doesn't really matter. One or the other works. And well, I don't care. I mean, how much CPU time is going to be used? Who knows, right? You have to go to the profiler and see if that really takes so much space or so much time or CPU time or something. I mean, you can always go and over-optimize, but in a prototyping stage, it doesn't matter. You want to get stuff to work in the first place and see if it works the way you want it to work, and see if the main objective, the main goal has or is going to become reachable. And it doesn't matter what you use. Use the shortest way, and later you can always go in and optimize, because once you make a build, you're going to see what's taking time, and you go through the profiler and see what is taking so much CPU time, what is taking all of that. And you can always go and take a look into the stats. You can always see, okay, when I go full screen mode, does that eat up? If you go like maximize, you always see what's happening in maximize based on the statistics. So, and if you see that your FPS over here, currently you can see I have 200 and something FPS, which is fine, no problems with that. Once the first objects get spawned, let's see if this FPS is going to go down. Well, it probably does a bit here and there. I mean, you have always like that CPU spikes and stuff like that. But do I care in a prototyping stage? No, I don't. And as long as that does not drop, let's say, below 30, you shouldn't care. Right? So it's just important in a prototyping stage to get stuff done and get stuff running as quick as you can, so you understand the work and see what's going on. So as you can tell, I have a bunch of these objects on screen right now, and I still have quite some good FPS over there. So I could wait now for 100 minutes later and see if any of them calls are taking more or less time, or getting anyhow inflict the FPS over there. But at the moment, I don't see any problems. Not at all. So even with like over 50 instances generated and moving and trying to reach a goal and stuff like that. So, that's why I don't care. So I get out of this maximized play because I don't really care about this right now. So I have the enemies in place, which means they are getting spawned from multiple objects. If I want to have multiple objects in general, like multiple enemy base or bases, I can do so. I just, well, not this way. I just place them the way I want, gonna duplicate them as much as I want. And, the spawn point is going to be here somewhere in front. We can see this when we go into global actual local location or local rotation. We can always see when we hit the W key on the keyboard or this move tool. We can see this is the spawn direction, or basically the look direction of our newly created instances. If you want to, later on, when it comes to optimizing, then you can use something called a object pool, which means when you have like a certain amount on screen and you destroy several of them, you can reuse the destroyed ones later. So, but object pooling, once again, is the same thing. You don't want to go in a prototyping stage and implement object pooling because you don't need to. You want to get stuff up and running. So What would be the next thing? How about I have a player character I can move along, or maybe I can have a movable target. Let's say a movable target. By the way, I can also later on target towers first. So maybe there's like a how shall I say, like an order type. So the first to order, the first in order, or maybe the the first goal is going to destroy the towers, destroy the walls, and then try to reach that point. Maybe this has something to do with attacking, like when we are changing the current state of moving to a state of attacking when they're close, like in range of towers, in range of enemies, in range, or like, player, or in range of walls. Something like that, so they can attack the walls, get rid of HP, destroy the wall, destroy the tower if possible, and so on and so forth. So all of these are going to be also things which need to be implemented over there. So currently, I lifted this one slightly, but it doesn't matter. So when a tower, for example, later on is going to be destroyed, we want the navigation mesh to be updated, of course. So currently, I would probably do something like a ghostish look-alike something, so I can click on this, or when I have a player in general. Let me pretty quickly see if I have to do something on this enemy base. No, I don't, so I can get rid of it. If I'm using a player, I have to move along through the scene, for example, that when I go there at this position, that whenever I'm in range, I can interact with certain things. Like I can upgrade it if I hit the X key or any other key, or an A key on a keyboard, or maybe on a joypad or something. So I can say, okay, whenever I'm close to that object and I hit a certain key, I can build or update something. There are probably some other things I need to take in consideration. Is sometimes there might be the possibility to have multiple objects on screen. So not quite sure how to handle this one later on, depending on how high the range has to be or how close I have to be to a certain object. The other way around would be I make them selectable, and then I say build, like using a user interface, a button or something, or maybe whatever, to try to build this thing. So the one or the other way around would be probably good. Same for if I use a player character, I would make it also here as simple as possible. So for example, the player can attack the enemies automatically by, selecting the first closest target and shoot at them by using, I don't know, a gun or an arrow or whatever. But also we can just say we cannot attack anything. We are just moving around, but we have maybe other enemies or other, or we have, let's say, an army, kind of an army, which is navigating automatically and shooting them other enemies. Yeah, why don't we try that first without moving yet? Maybe we can generate another unit over here to actually make something in the first place. Let me create like a tower kind of a building thing. I don't know. Let me name it tower. I just create an empty once again because I later on want to go for unchanged graphics, simple, without touching code, without touching spawn points and stuff like that. Maybe I'm gonna go just say, first off, I need to reset that one. So it's like on the ground. If I want to, I can, give it an icon so I can see what it should be about. And on here, I create a new 3D object, cube. Gonna lift it up 2 times. So it's like sitting on the ground. I'm holding control to snap to certain, or a certain distance. Snap settings are going to be over there. Let me make it a bit bigger in height. And a bit broader. So I'm gonna use R key for scale. I don't know. Once again, I don't care about size and stuff, at least not for the moment. So I take the main tower object and I put it maybe somewhere here, where it's supposed to be actually. And later on I can, replace things easily. Well, that's what I hope. Again, I don't care about the size and stuff. What we need in this tower is, of course, some kind of a spawn point, which is spawning, let's say, a bullet type of thing, where it could aim for enemies. And later on, we can also make it so that whenever, let's say, we have enough coins that we can update the power, the shoot range, something like that. So on this tower, which is going to be on the bottom, we need multiple things. And this is not about the enemies right now. This is more about, well, the player content. So I make a new player folder inside my scripts. So in here, I can create a new C# script. Gonna name it tower. And the tower can have or will have later on multiple, let's say, things to take a look at. So for example, we can make it so that we have a collider object. So whenever whoever is going to get into that collider, it will become a target. So we can, I don't know, draw a line or something to see if we could get rid of that. Or also we can, let's say we can shoot a bullet to the target and stuff like that. So basically nothing fancy overall. We can also use a radius, so we can check distances between and who is the closest to be attacked, like in a tower defense game, which is obviously kind of a part of that area over there, or of that tower. And we can also, let's say we can also showcase how far the distance of the tower in the first place is maybe going to be. Like we can draw a circle or something. So how do we do this? Well, first off, we're gonna create some more multiple things we need. Serialized field. So what do we need? We need a, let's say, spawn point or transform type. Maybe bullet spawn. I don't know. It will be somewhere on top of the tower. Then maybe we don't spawn anything on the bullet. That could be also cool. Maybe the tower creates or can hold units. That's probably a bit better. Instead of having like a tower defense, we maybe have to use units instead. Where's my square brackets? Something like how much units can be on top of that, and maybe the units do shoot. That's maybe a bit better. Yeah, why not? And the tower can probably create or generate new units over time, or I have to anyhow say how they get created or spawned. Maybe I have to buy new units for towers, but also the tower will have multiple other things. Yeah, let me keep that bullet spawn in here. Maybe I'm gonna change my mind later on, since once again I'm in the prototyping stage. I try to get stuff, well, in the first place running anyhow, and if I find that is horrible, then I change that. What I also want to have is maybe a transform unit spawn point. Unit spawn. So they can use the same thing, but they will not move. They will only be, at least for the moment, they will only be on spot. They stay there. Once they, see something, they're gonna shoot it. Maybe something like that. I could also use something called melee, like melee damage for them units. And speaking of units, I might need to use several subclasses basically. So everything is a unit. And, well, whoever is taking a look into a unit, so we can use something called inheritance to make our life easier later on. So basically we inherit from the base unit, and then we can use everything which is inside that. So, and the base unit is going to sit on each unit in general. So, not unity, just a unit spawn. What else? Maybe it's just a spawn function. We need to know which type of units we can pass on that, or maybe a prefab for them to spawn. So I'm gonna put a game object, unit prefab. Let's say unit prefab. We don't have this, or I don't have this one yet, but I'll see. I don't know. gonna make another serialized field for amount. So something like maximum unit amount or unit amount. It's of type int. And I need an array or a list. I prefer a list of game objects, which is going to be my unit list on the tower, on each of them. So whenever one is not available because it died, I can generate a new one. A new list of type game object, open close parentheses, close the line with a semicolon. So whenever I spawn, I first off need to see how many units are inside the list. If the list size is too high, then we don't spawn. And I don't know how this is going to be happening. Maybe I don't even need this, because whenever a unit dies, it can tell its tower. So it has maybe a relevance to its own tower and can tell the tower, hey, I died, create a new one of me in this and that amount of time. So both works. Let me stay with that. I want to create a player unit now. And once again, I'm gonna go and inherit unit later, I guess. So I have an enemy unit and a player unit, and then they can use the same stuff by just using some, virtual overrides and so on. So it is some kind of a base, I guess I want to do. I'm gonna create a new, let's say, just a unit script. Like that. Just wait for the compiler. And I create another one, which I maybe name player unit. So I can maybe inherit content from others. So I don't have to do things twice. Or, code-wise, I may be a bit optimized here and there. So the player unit, we can make it so that we inherit unit. Well, without that, we inherit unit. So instead of mono behavior, so we have still access to mono behavior, but we can also put our own content in the player unit, which has probably nothing to do with the enemy unit and vice versa. So we can have different stats and stuff like that for player unit, or maybe a different handling, since the enemies are going to be treated different. Do us roll the respawnability as an example. So I just keep it as that. I don't want the enemies, move too much. And I mean, vice versa. I want the enemies to be move and attack, and the actual player units, in general, they should stay, they should stay at position. Not quite sure. It depends on the unit type, I guess. So, where's my unit? So, the unit itself will have, well, obviously the same stuff as we already have inside our enemy move. So I can, for the moment, I just copy this content and put this into the unit class, like so. And NavMesh agent is not available inside here, so we need to use again the using Unity engine.ai namespace. Oh, it doesn't let me auto. No, I need this one. So we have access to navigation mesh components, and we can set the goal on these ones as well if we need to and if we want to. And probably in unit, we also have something like how to attack or how to detect targets. And with that, we can, use something like a range parameter, for example. And we can also say maybe later on if this unit is a melee type or a shooting type. But for the moment, let's try to detect a player. We don't need to have this one public, I guess. But we need to do this constantly, kind of. So once again, we can use what could we use? A box or a sphere collider to use detection. And whenever we detect an enemy, we can say, oh, we need to attack them, or we might want to follow them, or something like that. Also, we can use, well, I believe that's the easiest one. So every time somebody enters this particular radius, let's say, we can do something. So to do so, we need a collider object. So, and we need to, request that. So we can maybe use something like onTrigger enter. We need to pass in a collider. We can name it COL or other or whatever. And we need to see if that is an enemy. So we can use a tag. We can also use a layer. But in that case, I believe the tag is better. So we can use compare tag. And we can compare the tag enemy. So whatever is an enemy, it can be a building, it can be anything. Maybe on enemy structure, we want to do something similar or something different, I don't know. So if that is the case, we can just put out a debug line, debug.log. And then we can say, well, whatever, enemy found. So we just need to make sure that we have a collider to work with, or which is set to be trigger. Once again, it can be any type of collider, literally. And what I also want to do is I want to visualize that a bit. And I want to have a radius, detection radius, which I can use over here. I'm going to make it a float, a serialized float, and probably give it a range slider or something. So I'm going to make a serialized field of type float. I'm going to name it maybe detect radius, like that. And above that, or I believe we can use a comma in here. I'm not quite sure. Can also use a range from, let's say, 1 to 10. Looks correct. So we can basically, hopefully, we can do both. So we have a slider later on, and which we can say what is the detection range of that. And if we later on make our enemy move based on unit as well, it can use the same things. So we have some, let's say, reusability for all the content. So not everyone has its own thing. They are all looking at what does a unit do, which is the main purpose of inheritance over there. So we can say an enemy has been found. If we are having an enemy, that does not work, by the way. I mean, an enemy later on for an enemy, the player is going to be an enemy. So we need to determine several different scenarios for that one as well. Or let's say we have to make a virtual void or virtual override void. What is it called? I believe it's a public override void. Or is it a virtual? I guess it's a virtual. So whenever we later on, we don't even have to put in anything. So we could say copy, and I go to player unit and basically do here an override. So I override the one from here to say this has to be an enemy type. So we're gonna do from player unit itself, we're gonna see, okay, this is an enemy type, but from enemy spawner later on, we're gonna have, no, from enemy move in here, or I'm gonna rename this probably later on, we can use the same thing, but we're gonna go and take a look for player instead. So we override the actual unit method over there. So we could pass in any parameter over here because we are overriding this one virtual function for, for each single one who is actually using the unit as its, let's say, parent object or parent script. And we can do this, by the way, for everything else. So if we want to handle something totally different, then we just override certain methods and get rid of the content we don't need. So for example, this one here, or every unit is going to get its agent in the first place, everyone who is going to inherit that piece. And we don't have any targets, at least not for the moment, for this player unit. So it may or may not have a target at this particular point, so it will just stay there. But it could still use that thing. Now what I want to do is I want to get, in a wake, I also want to get the actual radius or actually want to set the actual radius of, let's say, a sphere collider on my position to be the same as the detection range radius over there. And to do that, we have to get the whatever collider it is. Usually it's a 3D collider. Probably it's a sphere collider. We don't need to. I believe so. We don't need to predefine what it is, the type of a collider. So I'm gonna name it maybe detect collider. And I just want to use this in the OnDrawGizmos function, which I don't want to have later on inside the build. It's just for me to visualize things maybe a bit easier, or maybe make it easier to change that, but just by using as just a range slider over this detection range over there. And we can do this inside the OnDrawGizmos function. So void, actually it has not to be public. Void OnDrawGizmos. Is it called with the gizmos? Can't type today. What we want to do is once we got this detect collider, we want to take its size or its radius. Let's see. I believe it's the bounds.size. Bounds.size is equal to. I believe it's not working since that, I believe, has a vector 3 bounds. So if it is a box, I'm not quite sure. Let's see if I put a sphere collider on it, because I believe that's the most. Obviously, I could probably use a capsule collider since we don't have a what is it called? I forgot. We don't have a cylinder collider. I might use a circle collider. So before I do that, I want to create a new player unit object. Just an empty game object again, player unit. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna reset it first to 0, reset. I'm gonna put some components on it. First off is a navigation mesh agent, and I reduce the base to 0.08 in minus. I believe that was the offset beforehand. I create or change the angular speed to 350 as I did with the enemies itself. Acceleration, I don't know. Radius stays as is, and you can see there's no graphic, just this thing. So on here, I'm gonna create a new 3D object capsule and lift it up as much as needed. And I can also paint or tint. Where's the materials folder? Gonna take my bluish and put this on this capsule. So basically this capsule does not need a capsule collider, but this unit needs something. And so I can use the sphere collider. If it lets me, sphere collider. And this sphere collider has a radius and it has a center point. So at the moment, the center point is going to be there at the bottom, wherever the pivot point is, or wherever the transform of this object is. So basically the player unit's base. And that's good. So I can now take this radius and use that. So instead of using a collider, I might gonna go and use the sphere collider. So SPHE sphere collider. And since that now has or should have a radius for me to change, there we go. I can pass in any parameter. I guess I can just make it like that and say the detect radius is going to be the radius of that. Gonna save that. Maybe between 1 and 10 is a bit too small, so maybe I need to make it up to, I don't know, maybe 30 or 15. I just need to play around with these numbers, so I give myself something between 1 and 30. And I need my unit script on that, or basically not my unit, but my player unit script. So it inherits, once again, it inherits the same content from unit. So I'm gonna take player unit. I don't use unit. To avoid using unit over here, we could make unit, I believe so, an abstract. So public abstract class. So we cannot use anything to that, and we should not be able to pull it directly on this object. Let's try. I believe that is what we can do. So we use unit, and as you can see, we cannot add it because the script class has been or is currently abstract, so we cannot use the unit directly, but we can use player unit, and we get some reference exceptions because we don't get the or we didn't got the actual collider over there. So we in Ondrogismos we might wanna also take and get the component. No, we do it a bit different. We say if detect radius, no, not radius, but collider. If the detect collider is not equal to null, which is obviously happening multiple times, it is going to be 0 or null because we haven't dragged it in. Only then we want to update the actual detection radius to become the detect radius, if that anyhow makes sense. So currently we don't have that, so probably I make it a public something so I can drag it in. Like this sphere collider, maybe I make it at least a serialized field like that. Gonna save this. We should get rid of these null references by just clearing the console. And that's why it's important to always see the console so you can definitely see what's happening, where are the issues, what are the mistakes. So now I can drag in my self unit, boop, and I can see this one here is, this radius now is 0, and this range slider, if I change that, I gonna see the sphere collider here. So if I go reduce that slider, I can automatically reduce to a certain, let's say, detect radius I want to set it to. So with putting that specific collider into that slot. And this is pretty cool, since now I can test what works for that unit, what is a good, let's say, range or distance. And whenever I now fiddle out that there's somebody coming into this radius or moving into this radius, well, I can do everything I want. I can interact with it and I can detect that. And we can do this by, since we know that these enemies are going to bypass this guy, we can see this in the console, or we should see this in the console. So, but before we can detect that, we need to go into the prefab from the enemy base, create a new tag, which is obviously the enemy tag. So I go create a new list, gonna name it enemy, and maybe probably I don't need a player tag because it is predefined, I guess. So select this prefab once again and make this an enemy. Boom. So in time, or vice versa, we can do the same thing for the player unit. We just can say here, this is the player. Boom. So this now is a player unit. Currently, once again, we don't have the same thing for the enemies, but we can simply do this by just inheriting unit. So if I now press play, I should see every time somebody enters this collider, after like 10 seconds, we should see a debug line that we have detected an enemy inside this. And then we can interact. So we can call maybe an interact, like an attack something. So we should see that in a moment. We don't. Why don't? Because I believe so. We have to have something. Well, first off, the sphere collider has to be trigger in the first place. And the second one is to detect something, we need to go and add a rigid body component. But we don't want to use anything like, gravity, blah. I believe we don't even need, or maybe we can use as kinematic, so it's a kinematic content. Just in case I want to not get pushed away or rotate in any manner, but on the y-axis. So I'm gonna freeze X and Z just in case. Gonna save that and try again. And with that, I can, detect now. Well, hopefully, with that rigid body, I might be able to detect it. I could even play around with positioning and stuff, and wait for a couple of seconds and see if one of our enemies is going to become detected once entering that radius, and they don't. Why not? Well, probably the other guys also need something to be detected. Like maybe this enemy base needs to have a collider to become detected. So we're gonna add here also a collider, maybe? Do we need to do this? I believe so. Do we need to do this on the base? Probably. Maybe we have to put a capsule. That's not a cool thing. The problem here is going to be we need to have multiple things, like 2 things. One is a sphere. Oh, that shouldn't be a problem at all. Well, we can make the capsule or whatever the graphic is going to be. We could also give that any type of a collider object and to determine a difference. But I believe that is not possible directly over here. So let me give it a cube collider, or no, what is it called? Box collider. And see if that works. Okay, that works so far. So, and this box collider should be just for visualizing or getting the actual player tag or enemy tag. If I now take an enemy base, I want to give it the same things. I want to give it a box collider at the bottom. Oh, once again, the capsule on the graphics over here is actually not relevant, so I can deactivate it. And I want to give it also a sphere collider. Sphere collider. So which is later on also going to be the same thing. It's going to have the same content. So instead of using enemy move, I wanna maybe use unit here as well, or just say enemy unit. As I said, I may reuse or may use the same content over there. But for that part, I don't really want to. So I just apply all to this enemy base. I can now get rid of that enemy base because I don't need it anymore, and try to fiddle out once again if the enemy gets detected by the player. And well, if that works, it also will work the other way around if the tag has been set correctly. So let's see if that works right now, because the sphere collider is not doing that. And there we go. Enemy has been found. I can now detect enemies by this little box at the bottom. So it is not intersecting anything, at least not for the moment. And vice versa, we should also get the information about the opposite. Not quite sure who is now giving me that information. I believe it's the on unit. And literally this part here, no, this part, I can get rid of it. Since I just override this method anyways. Probably I can also detect something else. Like I could even say, stop the agent whenever you have anything kind of type of enemy. So we don't need to walk further to the target because we have detected that. So we can say, hey, stop moving because you are on range or in range of your actual destination, the actual set destination over here. So let me change as a final step for today, I'm gonna go and change the enemy move. So I'm gonna name this one or rename this one to be enemy unit. I'm gonna do the same thing over here, enemy unit. I know there will be some troubles. I'm gonna inherit unit, the unit class, and actually, I don't need all of that. But what I do need is the same for detecting the actual enemy or the actual player. I'm gonna get rid of this arrow in a moment. And here I can say player found. So if I take a look at player, I'm gonna put out, hey, the player has been found instead of the enemy, because we are requesting from enemy side. We are requesting something different. Also, I can go a bit deeper and later on spit out, is it a tower I have found? Is it my main goal? And so on and so forth. In the enemy spawner, I just need to go and, take enemy unit. And as we can tell, we cannot access that one. Let me save first and get out of here. And I also save unit. I just close my, since I have renamed it, I need to generate new metadata, or basically Unity needs to generate that. I will get a warning about this. As you can see, metadata does not exist, yada, yada, yada. We clear the console. And now we can also see the script is not available on my enemy base anymore. So I get rid of it, or I just take the one I really want to have here, which is actually not really nice. So prefab has missing scripts. So I get rid of that script, remove component, and I want to go and add the enemy unit script right now, like this. So, and as you can tell, it has now the same things. It has a detection radius. I can pass in a sphere collider, which is on my main object. And I can change its detection range to whatever I want to. And so far, so good. And it has the same things. And I'm going to close that. I save my scene just in case. And now let's see if the opposite also works. So I should get spit out multiple things. I should get spit out that an enemy has been found as well as a unit has been found if they are still able to move. And this is the question now. Are they able to move? So as you can tell, we are inheriting unit. So on this object, we can still set the target by calling that inside enemy unit, which is, you know, just inheriting unit. We can do the same content. Let's see if we also are able to detect all the stuff. So we can see an enemy has been found from this guy and a player has been found over there as well. So both works. The question is always who needs to have the actual rigid bodies. So I believe both should have one. So also later on to detect damage in case of rigid body interactions and stuff like that, or when they get hit by something. So if I select one of them enemy bases over here, which is this one, they also detect each other, but they don't care about each other due through the fact that they're using different keywords like tags. And that looks good. So far, so good. So what I could do is I don't have to, but I should set the sphere collider and the box collider to be is trigger, just in case. I'm gonna take a look into the player unit pretty quick and see if that works here as well. Is trigger and box collider. I want to make this one a trigger as well, just in case. Gonna save that. Once again, I don't have the rigid body on the enemy unit right now. I guess, but I believe I should have it. So I put a rigid body component on that one, just in case as well. Gonna do the same settings of freeze, rotation, over X, and that. And I'm gonna go and do not use gravity, so no gravitation is going to happen over there. Can close that. I have to remember, I just save just in case. And so everything works in case of detection. So these guys can be detected by them and vice versa. So they could interact depending on something, whatever that something could be in the future. And the last thing is, I want this tower maybe for today, at least, because I'm already quite long in the stream. So I want that tower to generate, let's say, 2 units. And once one unit is later on not alive anymore, for example, I want to respawn it. And spawning is basically the same thing as on these buildings. So probably I can create something like a spawning mechanic for each of them things, so they're basically allowed to use the same functions, but doing their own things based on, you know, overrides and stuff like that if needed. Since I have created the tower already, I just use it as is. So I can now have a unit list. I now have a unit prefab I can spawn. No, I don't have. I created pretty quick. So scripts, prefabs, gonna create a new folder for player prefabs, player, with a big P. double click, and I drag in my player unit. And later on I can, give it different names, create that, duplicate that, resize it, and so on and so forth. So nothing fancy on that one. And I can also get this box collider. I can later on use this also for taking damage and stuff like that, just by resizing it to, let's say, the mesh size or whatever, and whatever I want to do so. So if it is a bigger unit, like has a bigger radius or something, I just use that little box collider in the bottom and use that as a damage taker or something. So that is what I really need to take care of later on, that a certain collider has to be spoken to. Not quite sure yet how to, but we'll see. What else? Yeah, I now have the player unit over there, so I can tell the tower now to duplicate or to generate that certain unit. To do so, and in the first place, I just create a new void spawn unit. Unit with a big U, maybe it reads easier. And I can repeat this by using a for loop. And I can say the unit amount, or amount to spawn, maybe, I don't know. And I can set this one equal to 2 at the very beginning. And I have a unit spawn point. Unit spawn point. Gonna rename them here and there, so might take my life or make my life easier. And now I want to just, put them on the field. So wherever this waypoint is, I don't really want to do anything to the units yet. I just want to place them on the field. So whenever I need to, I can update or spawn necessary units, like after a certain amount of time or after a cycle of something has happened. So every day or night cycle, if I use that, or every time cycle in general. So to do so, we can just say, just in case, because I may need that later. So I can put this here already. Gonna create a new game object, new unit. You can name it whatever you please like. I'm gonna instantiate that one, open close parentheses. And first off, what do we want to use is the unit prefab. Unit prefab. Where do we want to spawn that? It's going to be at the unit spawn point. Dot position, since it's a transformer, we need a vector. And the last one is the unit spawn point dot rotation, if we want to use that as being an indicator to rotate in a certain direction. And if I later on need to talk to something inside new unit, I can always, keep that. What I also want to put in is this new unit inside this unit list, just in case if I need to do something for them. I don't know. I can just say unit list dot add. What do I want to add? I want to add the new unit. So I have a list I can access and talk to and do something to it, and so on and so forth, every time I want and need to. So, and in start, void start. And I don't really have to do it later on in start, but for the moment, whenever I start the game, I want every tower to generate 2 units at the same time at the certain spot, if possible. So I just call spawn unit. Or basically we are spawning multiple units, so maybe I'm gonna rename that to units, because it's, well, depending on the unit amount. And if a tower has 0, well, obviously we don't spawn anything at all. So the for loop shouldn't even run at all. So, and final step, I'm gonna have to prepare the tower a bit. So I get rid of my unit. I'm gonna now have to set up my tower. So the tower needs a spawn point. So I'm gonna go and create a new empty. I'm gonna name it spawn point. Without that. And I can drag it over here. I'm gonna give it also something. Gonna rotate it by 180. That was not 180, but almost. Maybe like that. So there are like getting generated like in front of the tower over there. So maybe I can maybe I can do this even a bit closer to the tower. Well, it doesn't really matter at all. But let me make it like so, because this navigation mesh here, has its limits as well. So otherwise it would become pushed inside that, since still there is a navigation mesh agent on it. And it shouldn't get anything. It shouldn't even get a new target or something to call or to actually get. But we can say, okay, whoever is the first reaching that, let's say, collider, we can target that one, or can call target, to target this enemy, for example. And we can do certain things on the enemies later on as well. So this tower now needs its spawn point. So I go back to the inspector. First off, we need to add the tower script, like so. And now we have all these things. I don't really care about the bullet spawn now. We just need a unit spawn point, which I just drag in here. Boop. Then we got the unit prefab, which I take this one first. And we got the amount to spawn. And whenever we press play, we should see 2 spawning units over here, like in the other ones, whenever the game starts. And they are kind of over each other, so they are not really pushing each other away, which is probably not nice. So we may need to bring them, I don't know, slide a bit away, and they can see each other, they can detect each other pretty good. And yeah, the next one would be getting them to interact into each other, like, getting rid of themselves, maybe attack each other, and so on and so forth. But for the moment, that is it. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this little, let's say, starting point of my game project over here. I'm not quite sure if that makes or helps you at all. For me, it is, once again, some little project I can work on. And I want to go through everything necessary, let's say, to navigate through content, stuff like that. Maybe I'm going to put a river over there, maybe some bridges and so on and so forth. Not really necessary at this certain stage, but for now it is it. So I implemented spawning units on either side, like on the enemy side as well as on the player side, which is pretty good so far. The enemies are targeting the main building or the main object, whatever that is, at least for the moment. Later on, there might be more necessary for them pieces. I have implemented detection, so they can detect each other, so they could attack each other or whatever necessary. So we have made use of inheritance, so every unit has the same things. But they can be treated differently based on their own settings or their own actual scripts. And that's it for today. So, thanks a lot for tuning in. Once again, don't forget to join my Discord channel if you want to keep on track. And if you want to connect maybe with other people, the link is down below in the description. Same for check out my online courses if you want to learn something different or new. There are a bunch of new courses coming up soon as well. And yeah, once again, check out my links in the description. And if you need help for your own game project, feel free to hire me. Head over to my website, OctoManGames.com, and contact me over there. Have a good one. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this one, and talk to you the next time.